I'm an enormous fan of Verdi's Shakespeare operas, Macbeth, Falstaff, and Othello. And he loved Shakespeare deeply. But interestingly enough for me, although those are great achievements, his most Shakespearean opera is Simon Boccanegra. And the reason for that is between the contrast of the state and the private man. And he writes, with his librettist, a truly great acting role, which is, I suppose, the pinnacle of every baritone's ambition to prove that he's a singing actor. It's a part of great sensitivity and enormous power, and the great reconciliation scene between the daughter and him, the long-lost daughter, is one of the most touching things. The loss of his daughter, Verdi's daughter, was all the way through his life was a pain and a catastrophe for him. So the writing of a scene where a daughter is brought alive and reunited is deeply moving in the writing. But that is also Shakespearean because of Perdita in The Winter's Tale and because of Marina in Pericles and all of Shakespeare's obsessions with daughters and families being reunited. So that's probably makes it the most humane and the most touching. And these characters are all real in Boccanegra. In some Verdi operas they are sopranos, tenors and baritones, but these people live. When you're starting off with a new production, what I insist that I do is I consider the century and the period it's written in for the original story, the century that the composer wrote it in, because that gives a reflected image of that previous, earlier period, and now. So we understand both of them. If you turn all those three things towards one another, and rather like your toy theatre as a child, you look through that, that should be your production, with simple, easy references to all those three items. And that's what we've got on stage, a slightly contemporary look at the set in the way that it's structured. It is not realistic, it's powerful, and it's arresting to look at. But the costumes are Victorian, which means that you see characters on stage wearing clothes that they would have been wearing when the music was written, but there are endless early medieval references throughout the look of things. So that's how we achieve that. Because you have the huge references to upset and distress in the streets and a city and a country in turmoil, this fits the Victorian understanding because Verdi was the great champion of the reunification of Italy. So there was a contemporary reference in 1860, 1870 for all of this. And for us, turmoil is everything we live with. That's an easy one to draw together. But I like the fact that this is contrasted with the understanding of the private life in turmoil and a man who may have achieved everything but is deeply unhappy. And the sense of uneasy lies the head that wears the crown is another Shakespearean thought that I think this touches on very deeply. When the production opened, it was so far ahead of its time. I mean, the great jump that everyone believes is at the end of Verdi's life when he moved into the great genius pieces of Falstaff and Othello after the Requiem, leaving Aida way behind in stylistic quality. Everyone believes that's the great leap that Verdi made, but the great leap was after the middle period, Trovatore, Traviata and Rigoletto, that within a scope of one other opera within that scope, he suddenly created Boccanegra, which had all of the future in it. So the 1857, the earlier version, is still astonishing because of where it comes from. But in 1881, he felt that because it hadn't been a success, and I think the reason that it's not a success and some of the reason for it not being as appealing as some of the more popular ones now, is that the lovers are not smack in the middle of the opera. That Boccanegra is, and the people and the politics. And I think people would much rather watch people swooning and drooping through love duets and dying together, and that doesn't happen in this opera. And I think they feel slightly short-changed in romanticism, and what they get is a great big slice of realism, which is much more thrilling. Covent Garden has a very specific relationship with this piece, but each time it's done, it gets more people to love it as they become more familiar with it. It's a dark, bleak piece. It is pessimistic. And the tinta, that's the colour of the music, is mahogany and rich. But the melodic invention and the climaxes and the great, great ensembles and the beauty of everything is overwhelming. And I'm just hoping that even more people might fall in love with this as much as I have.